Hello again, my fiber friends. I'm ReRe, and this is Exploration Crochet, part of the Yarn Over Hook network. This week, in honor of it being St. Patrick's Day week, I thought it would be the perfect time for us to cast our eyes toward the Emerald Isle. When people think of Ireland, they picture leprechauns and top hats wearing green, when actually, in the earliest folklore, they were described as wearing red jackets and cocked red hats. And speaking of St. Patrick, most people don't know he was not actually Irish. So, right away, we're starting this episode with an important reminder. Sometimes, what people think they know is not always the whole story. And with that in mind, we're going to be talking about one of the most beautiful, layered, and misunderstood traditions in the crochet world: Irish crochet. So first I'm going to jump off script right now and say, look, this has been one of the most fascinating things I have researched. Because the more I learned I wanted to learn. I have learned so much. I have been working on this podcast for days, trying to figure out where to put my focus, what I should omit, what I should include. And so I've decided, now that I've already hit record, this will probably just be part one, and it's going to be an overview. In this episode, I'm going to look at Irish crochet in broad strokes, how it sits in the intersection of fashion history, famine history, women's labor history, design history, and just plain crochet history. And I appreciate you sticking with me, and I hope you enjoy this more informal format as I may jump in and change direction again. But for now, and looking back at my script here, let's start with a clarification. Irish lace is the broader category. The first thing to understand is Ireland had multiple lace traditions. Carrick-Macross is appliqué lace, Limerick is tambour on net, Kinmar is needlepoint lace, and finally, our focus, Irish crochet lace, which is lace made with a hook. Now, they all belong in the larger story of Irish lace, but they are not interchangeable. So when I say Irish crochet, I'm going to be talking about a specific lace tradition with its own identity and its own history. So, grab your hook, pour yourself an Irish whiskey or get a shamrock shake, settle in, and let's see how far we get into this amazingly beautiful lace garden. Let's start with the basics. As stated before, Irish crochet lace is a style of lace made with a crochet hook, usually from very fine cotton or linen thread, in which individual motifs are made separately and then joined together. That means the maker does not build one continuous piece of fabric from edge to edge the way we think of modern crochet projects. Instead, Irish crochet is often made in stages. First, you create the little pieces, and there can be many: flowers, leaves, scrolls, shamrocks, sprigs, vines, rosettes, little raised cords, sometimes berry clusters, sometimes wheels or decorative picots. Then those pieces are arranged on a pattern, almost like placing appliques into a composition. And then the empty spaces between them are filled with joining structures: bars, sometimes called brides, net, mesh, decorative bridges. So in a sense, Irish crochet is not just a stitch style, it's a construction method. That distinction matters because when people hear Irish crochet, sometimes they think it means a certain flower motif or a certain lacy vintage look or just old-timey thread crochet. No. Historically, Irish crochet is better understood as a motif-based lace system. It is architecture, tiny botanical architecture made with a hook. And one of the most recognizable features of Irish crochet is its dimension. The motifs are often raised or have raised portions. They stand off the surface. A leaf vein might be padded. A petal edge might be outlined with a thicker cord. A flower may look sculpted instead of flat. That three-dimensional quality is one of the reasons Irish crochet became so admired. It looked rich. It looked elegant. It looked complex. So if you remember nothing else from this episode, remember this. Irish crochet is a lace tradition built from separately made motifs, usually floral, often raised, and joined into a larger composition with open work connections. That's the core. Let's take a look at the actual making, because the technical process is part of what makes Irish crochet so fascinating. Historically, Irish crochet was usually worked with very fine linen thread and tiny steel hooks. I know I've said that before, but I really want to stress that. These are not your average modern day tools. These were fine tools for fine work. A maker would begin by producing individual motifs. Some motifs were worked flat, others were built over heavier cord or thread, or crocheted over other crocheted stitches, and this would create structure and relief. This cording or building stitches upon stitches made outlines stand proud and helped shapes hold their form. This is one of the secret ingredients behind that classic Irish crochet look. It gives body, it gives contour, it gives that almost sculptural appearance. Once enough motifs are completed and arranged, then came, in my opinion, the truly masterful part, the joining ground. This is where the maker connected all those floating little motifs with an open structure, a mesh, a net, bars, brides, stitches that created stability while preserving delicacy. This part is easy to overestimate if you're only staring at the flowers, but the joining is everything, because the motifs are the stars, yes, but the negative space is the stage. And if the joining is clumsy, too dense, too weak, too awkward, the whole piece loses elegance. So Irish crochet requires not only motif skill, but compositional skill. You are balancing shapes, spaces, structural soundness, rhythm, and visual flow. This is why I say it's engineering. True textile engineering. And Irish crochet appears in all kinds of objects and garments. And because fashion in the late 19th century loved ornamentation, let's be honest, Victorian and late 19th century taste did not exactly fear embellishment, Irish crochet fit beautifully into the moment. It could soften a neckline, it could enrich a sleeve, signal refinement, add texture and prestige to a garment. And because it was made in white or pale thread so often, it aligned with the visual language of cleanliness, delicacy, femininity, and luxury. Now, when we see antique examples today in museums or photographs, they can almost look impossibly intricate. And that is partly because many of them are. But it's also because modern crocheters sometimes forget how fine the materials were. Historic Irish crochet was often worked at a scale that feels incredibly tiny to modern hands. Tiny thread, tiny hook, tiny stitches, and massive patience. So when people today recreate Irish crochet in heavier thread or yarn, it can absolutely be beautiful, but it may not convey just how refined the original pieces often were. Antique Irish crochet can be astonishingly delicate. All right, so during the break, I peeped my script and we're doing pretty good. So I think now what I want to do is take a look at how it spread. And honestly, this is a portion that gave me the most trouble. Crochet has always been a collective intelligence. In a previous episode, I talked about how the most influential crocheters in history are anonymous, mostly women, and working class. Crochet was built by anonymous hands long before it was stamped with any famous name. So we have to remember we honor the names that shaped the record while still respecting the countless unnamed makers who shaped the craft. And this is equally true of Irish crochet. Now, there is an important name that comes up in the story. Mademoiselle Riego de la Branchardière. She was one of the most influential early crochet publishers in the 19th century. Historians debate whether she should be called the inventor of certain styles or just a codifier and popularizer. But there is little doubt that she played a major role in spreading crochet techniques through print, particularly at a specific time in Ireland. If you would like to learn more about this crochet pioneer, please check out my podcast, Crochet People Part 1. I'll leave the link in the show notes. Now, having introduced her to the story, I must stress when it came to crochet in Ireland, Riego built on a foundation laid by others. A name which popped up frequently in my research, who predated Riego by almost 100 years, was Eleonore Nano Nagle. Born in 1718, she was a pioneer of Catholic education in Ireland. Nagle came from a wealthy family, and as it was forbidden for Catholics to be educated due to penal laws in Ireland at the time, she was educated in France. While in Paris, she learned how to use a crochet hook. On her return to Cork, she founded the Sisters of the Presentation of the Blessed Virgin Mary, also known as the Presentation Sisters, and she brought the Ursuline Order, whose mission is empowering girls and women through education, to Ireland. Nagle educated the poor, teaching them how to read and write, and she also taught them how to crochet. Interestingly, the art of crochet was kept behind doors for some time. But in the 1830s, when crochet was first becoming really fashionable, the womenfolk of salmon fishers on Cork's River Lee were skilled in working it enough to supplement their husbands' earnings. This is important to note because this predates the Great Potato Famine by about 15 years. So, as stated, Irish crochet grew not just through home knowledge, but through organized teaching and printed instruction that allowed techniques to travel farther, be repeated more consistently, and enter schools and markets more easily. How it spread is important because it also helped create regional distinctions. And this is where I was really getting lost in the shamrocks because there is just so much interesting information. If there's one thing I learned, it's that Irish crochet was never one frozen, unchanging style. As Irish crochet spread through towns, schools, teachers, and markets, local variations developed. One place might favor certain motifs, another might prefer a different mesh structure. Teachers and communities shaped the lace in different ways. Families had secret and guarded motifs. If neighbors entered the home unexpectedly, the lace would be hidden. Motifs took on family nicknames like the Lily Quigleys or the Rosa McMahon, and I am not making those up. Their special motif was the basis of a family's income. Families delighted in creating new filling stitches, embellishments, and motifs, as these would bring them a greater income. And fascinatingly, many motifs have gone to the grave due to secrecy. People are literally today working to figure out the stitches. And then there is Clones lace. Clones in County Monaghan became one of the best-known centers of Irish crochet lace production. It developed a distinctive reputation, especially for its joining grounds and its particularly decorative mesh structures, as well as tiny knot details that added texture and distinctiveness. Irish crochet was not one rigid national formula. It was and is a living tradition. Well, my fiber friends, I really appreciate you hanging with me as I traipse through the shamrocks, discovering that Irish crochet is not just pretty old lace. It is structure, skill, labor, survival. It is craft in the full definition of the word. What looks delicate on the surface carries an enormous amount of history underneath it. Woman's work, family knowledge, technical brilliance, fashion, poverty, pride, and persistence all stitched into one tradition. And that to me is what makes Irish lace so remarkable. It reminds us that crochet has never been small. It has never been just decorative. A hook and thread can build beauty, yes, but it can also build income, identity, and legacy. The more I researched this topic, the more obvious it became that Irish crochet is a whole lace garden of stories, and every path leads to another one. I'll leave links in the show notes for places that you can go to read about different stories and see pictures of Irish lace. And if you come across something, let me know in my socials. I would love to see what you discover. Irish crochet is more than flowers and mesh. It is a living record of what crochet can do when necessity, artistry, and ingenuity meet. Thank you so very much for spending this time with me today. This has been Exploration Crochet.